What's happening, Andy here? I'm joined today by special guest Mike Reardon. How are you today, Mike?
Doing great.
Just wanted to check in. We touched base back at Mike Stramaglio's big event, ECS. You gave a really great session, a long session on just all sorts of bits about your history, your background, the industry, and then we caught you at another one at BTA where you did a similar one, a little bit different, and just the wealth of knowledge you bring to the table. You're a name I've heard in this industry for many, many years. My dad obviously was an analyst back in the day, and you were a name that I had heard before I even knew what the copyright industry was. So with that, let's tell me a little bit about Mike Reardon and what's your background, and I've got some questions for you if you don't mind.
Okay, my background is I went to Kansas State University, one of the powerhouse football programs in America. Then I went with IBM and sold typewriters and dictating equipment for 7 years. Left there and joined an equipment leasing company, family owned, for about 11 years. And when I was in the leasing business, and we only worked with copier dealers, we did some medical equipment, but it was mainly copier dealers. And it became obvious to me that copier dealers needed to have a better hiring process and training process. So I came across one, and when I was 37 years old, 41 years ago, or 50, whatever, how many, I'm 70, I'll be 78 next month. And I started my company. And for 40 years, I've had the honor and the privilege of working with copier dealers, primarily in the areas of hiring, developing, and creating motivational environments. And I've had the honor and the privilege of working with some really great copier dealers. And I'm probably the happiest guy you will have on any of these interviews. I've had a great life. I love what I do. And a couple of years ago, I semi-retired. I thought I had retired, but now I'm finding out it's semi. And I'm just, glad to be here and share any information that I can with any of the people that will help them build their quality organizations.
Well, Great America, Jenny Fisher is the one who organized this, and we'll have to thank her for that. She's been trying to get me to do this interview for quite a while, and the insight that you have in just so many areas, really just want to spend some time picking your brain and maybe talk about some trends that we've seen over the years that kind of resurface or come around again. And I think the big one I'd like to just start right out with is acquisitions, right? That one just never seems to go away, and if anything, it seems to be picking up speed. What do you think of our little industry and where we're at with the acquisitions today?
Well, uh, that's more than a 20-minute question.
Let's
I,
see if we can dive into it. We'll
I
guide it
think
along.
let's go back and look at the history of acquisitions. Uh, Prior to 1988, there wasn't much of an acquisition. There weren't many mega dealers. Alco had started and they bought a couple of companies. They bought one up in New York by your hometown. And then they bought one out in California that was a total bust. I mean, it was just awful. And then in 86 or so, they bought Halley Gibbs. And that began to legitimize them. And so then the big push came with Alco, Hillman, Erskine House. Those were kind of the big three in the late 80s. And they all started bidding against each other. Now, that's important to remember what I'm saying here and get some of these dates. And there was a wave. I had, out of the first 12 companies that Alco Standard bought, 9 of them were my clients. So I got to see it pretty closely up hand, close up hand, everyone I meant there. And then Hillman sold Icon. Erskine House just kind of faded away, and Danka became a player. And Danka bought 7 of my clients. And so in 95 and 96, the big wave was 88 to 92, 93. Then there was a drop off. Then there was another wave about 97 to 99. These things seem to go in waves, and the mega dealers bid against each other. And then Icon and Danka ran into their problems, and you really had Global starting in 95. And Global to me was the epitome of a really outstanding mega dealer. And then up into 2007, they were buying. And then in 2007, they sold to Xerox. And Tom Johnson, I think, left in 2008. And Michael Shea ran it for a number of years. And it did fine. And then Xerox made the mistake that all these guys make. They come in and they start trying to, tell you how to do everything and change the names and all that kind of stuff. So that's the mega dealer. And right now there's, and I'm not as intimate as I was. I've had two of my former clients sell to mega dealers in the last year. And I was pretty involved in those. But I'm not intimate with the whole game. But it seems like there's three or four. They're not as interested right at this minute. Rates have gone up, and so I'd say the hot spot was maybe last summer, and it's cooled down a little bit. But don't worry, there'll be another wave in I don't know, a year or year and a half, and they'll steam up again. And to position you for a mega dealer, it's kind of interesting. One of the things the mega dealers are going to look at is your revenues, because they really, this is, I think, kind of a fine point. And I don't know that they've even defined it as well, but they like to buy over-led, under-managed companies, because they know that they can bring all the management stuff in. And of course, that management stuff will be in conflict with some of the leadership stuff, but they really, they want somebody. Everybody thinks they're after profits because of this 5 times earnings or 5.5 or 6, whatever the going number is. And they are interested in that, and you've got to have that. But what they want is they want somebody that they can come in and bring in all the management stuff, and they can start making a lot more money on it. And their average rate of return is 12 to 14 months, and that's what they want. They want it quick because they're going to gear up to sell it at some point. And so you've got to play the game, get your earnings up to 10%, 12%. You get up to 16, 17%, you're not as attractive to them because they're not going to be able to turn you so fast. And so that's, you get in that 10, 12, 13, that's really a nice range. But you want to have revenues. You want to have revenues. And that to me is what a lot of people miss with this. But anyway, now that's the mega dealer. But what I see trending is a lot of my larger clients, they're acquiring. And I think that is an interesting dynamic. I now Dex is a big player in the whole thing too. But anyway, you look at almost every section of the country has a pretty good size independent dealer, over 100 million, and they want to acquire. Now that's a different game when you're selling to them, because they don't have a formula that they follow. Most of them have an idea of how they approach it, but they get much more into let's make a deal. And I think that that's one of the games that a lot of people that are selling have forgotten. This is a deal thing. I think we try to make it way too professional. I think there's a real advantage in selling to, I can name some names. I don't know if that would be appropriate, but each area of the country has a big dealer that's buying. And the way is you contact them. And then you play a silly little game with them because they'll offer you, it's going to take you about a year and a half to sell it. Okay. And you might as well just get that in your head. They're going to come back with a lower number than you think it should be. And then you'll have to massage through that and get your ego in check. And then about a year and a half later, you'll probably end up selling it to them. But I really encourage people not to discount this whole thing of everybody thinks of just the mega dealers. There's some really good independents that are buying, and they're usually not going to tear your company up as much as the mega dealer's going to. So that's, I can go on if you want me to go on.
Well, let's look at where excuse me, where is this all going? We've had it these cycles before, and typically in the past we have a lot of entrepreneurs who get displaced for a few years, and they have these non-competes that they sit out, and then they all seem to have come back. The best example is you mentioned them before, the Doyles, right? So they sat out for a little while, then they took some of that Danka money and started it all over again, and they're possibly, I don't know, maybe they'll get to the size of Danka at some point. But there are fewer dealers out there. The pot's not as big as it used to be, and so where does this leave us at the end? Are we just going to have a handful of dealers, or is everyone eventually going to sell, or the little guy is going to get squeezed out? Where do you see this going?
Well, I think if you're below 10 million, you better get bigger. But right along with this, Andy, is not only the bigger deal. Our industry is really full of a lot of old guys. And to me, some consultants start, well, what's your exit plan? The first time they meet somebody, well,
Yeah.
what is your exit plan?
Yeah.
Well, if you're below 55 years old, you don't need an exit plan. You better have it figured out with your attorney as far as all the tax stuff and the trust and all that kind of stuff. But operationally, hopefully you've got an executive team, and if something happens to you, it's going to be a fire sale, and they'll sell to somebody. But what we've got is a bunch of guys that are 60 to 70 to 75 years old, and they're tired. And that was one of my biggest challenges in picking a client was, are these guys tired? And I think that acquisitions are going to just be everywhere because you got a lot of guys that are 67, and it's the classic line, I'll die at my desk. I'll never sell. Well, I'm an entrepreneurial guy. I've only worked with entrepreneurs. I've never courted the mega dealers. I've never courted manufacturers. That's why most people have never seen me speak. I've spoken more in the last 12 months publicly than I did in about 40 years combined, because I love the entrepreneur. But the fact is, when you're 65 and 70, you've got to make a decision. Is the company better with me being a tired guy that wants to, and his wife's yakking at him to travel more, and all of his buddies are sitting over at the club at the Quivera room playing cards and bitching about how fast the greens are? And does he want to, what does he want to do? And they better be thinking about it. So I think there's going to be a lot of, I'm not sure they're be quote unquote mega dealers. I think a lot of independent guys that have the fire in the belly, that are in their late 50s, that want to bump this thing on up to being $250 million. I think they're going to be buying a lot. And I think that's going to be a big area to be selling to. The mega dealers, they'll come and go. But I think there's a lot. And I think I think it's I think if I was $100 million dealer, I'd be excited because I think there's a lot of tired guys out there, and they don't know what to do with their companies.
So how about these 10 to 20 million dollar guys, even these 5 to 10 million dollar guys who were maybe on the verge, on the cusp of cracking into that relevance area that you kind of mentioned, especially when you get to that 10 million, where do these independents see themselves in 5, 10 years? Is it possible to keep growing? Are they going to be able to keep up? Are they going to be able to compete with these mega dealers and with some of these $100+ million dealers? We've got a bunch of them now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to compete. I mean, just to be blunt, but I'm a weird guy in that I believe so passionately that if you're a $15 million dealer, and I had a whole bunch, people will talk about some of the big dealers I had a whole bunch of 15 to $20 million dealers. And, they're all making pretty good money and they got a pretty good lifestyle. And, their kids are gone to college now. Now the kid might come back into the business, and that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother deal. But I think if you're 10 to 20 million, you got to get yourself some good people that are going to be loyal to you for another 10 years and run it till you're 65. Do you have to get into IT? That's a whole nother discussion, a whole nother podcast. I think you probably do. I think the copier business has some time to run yet, but I'm probably old school on that. Seems to me 20 years ago, I had all these guys tell me that if you're not out of the copier business in 10 to 15 years, you're going to be broke. Well, I look at a bunch of my clients that are living awfully luxurious lives being copier dealers. And here it is 2023.
Yeah.
And, but my advice to the 10 to 20, get yourself some good people, try to grow. And then if a good deal comes along, you probably better take it.
So you sound like you're a fan of the acquisition model, growing through acquisitions. Do you ever see problems trying to integrate these, multiple companies? I mean, how does that go for these medium-sized dealers when they acquire, when they start down that path? Like you said earlier, the mega dealers have a plan. They come in, they know what they're doing, and the other side of that is everything's a negotiation. So do they go smooth? Do they blow up? What have you seen?
Oh, when my clients buy somebody, or, well, I have to think, I don't think I've ever had a client sell to another independent. But anyway, it would take, you just play the game. If you're going to be acquiring, or if you're going to be acquired, it's going to be a 3 to 5 year project. Now, a couple of them have it down pretty much that they are going to shorten that. But here's the game. They make the deal, and this is more the independent guy, or the mega dealer has the same deal. They always think they're going to keep the owner on. And so they give them a 3-year contract, which is stupid. I would say that maybe 10% will still, I mean, there are cases to where they've been there for 10 years, 50. But the rule is after about a year to year and a half, both parties want to end it. And the key has always been, in my observation, is that until the bigger dealer, the acquiring dealer, puts one of their people in from the home base, it really doesn't get changed. The culture keeps with what it was. And especially if the owner stays on, he'll try to buy into it, but it's been his show for 20, 30, 40 years. And as much as he gives lip service to it, it's tough. And so until you get somebody from the home office, to call it that, or it usually, the conversion usually doesn't change. And I think This is one thing that, and it surprises because a lot of people about me, because I'm kind of known as a touchy-feely guy. Uh, but if you acquire, or if you're being acquired, or if you acquired, clean it all up. Don't wait 2 or 3. You're going to have to clean it up at some point. You might as well clean it up right now and move on. But most people jack around with it for 2 or 3 years, and then the owner leaves and the key person leaves, and finally we have the new culture takes over, and that's just I've seen this happen so many times, uh, that's it's a 3 to 5 year process to where the people feel good about it, and that you kind of take it over.
So as we wind down, maybe how about some closing thoughts on, for that medium-sized dealer, what do you need to do in the next couple of years as far as your own dealership? You mentioned a little diversification. Do they need to acquire? Can they maintain without acquisition? Is this something that you would say they really need to do to grow, or can they grow organically? But what are some closing thoughts on what that independent dealer can do over the next few years to just make sure that they're relevant going forward?
Yeah. Well, one, I'm going to come at it from different directions. One thing that people don't talk about is you better have a doggone good banking relationship. You better be feeding that bank lots of information, because we're into a different game right now. Now, this game's happened before. It happened in 73 and 74. It happened in 88 to 92, blah, 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 blah. But that's the game right now. And I'll guarantee you, I know it factually, the banks are looking at you. They're all looking at every loan they've got. And they're all they don't have to have stress tests, because most of the banks the dealers are working with aren't that big, but they are being checked by the auditors. And so one thing they want to do is really solidify that banking relationship. Number two, really solidify that manufacturing. Don't give in to them, but you better know your relationship with your manufacturer. Now, I don't know that those were the two answers that you expected. So now I'll go to on the operational side. A lot of these companies that were 15 and 20 million many years ago, they grew organically, but almost all of them that I know of, they acquired. And I think we have a lot of, and I don't know if you cut me off, Andy, or I didn't realize we had.
No, we're still going.
Okay. But if you're a $15 million dealer, I'll guarantee you there's some $1 or $2 million dealer around your area that the guy's 60 some years old, his wife's complaining that they aren't getting the fruits of all their hard work. And you need to go have lunch with him. And you go have lunch with him, and you bitch about the manufacturers with him, and you bitch about the bankers with him. And you talk about how, are we going to have to get into managed networks? And you create a relationship with them. And I'll guarantee you, all these big companies that are now 100 million, when they were 15, 20, 25 million, they were doing exactly that. They were getting to know these people. And then about a year later, they're really bleeding all over the place. And you say, let me take you out of your misery. And you work out some deal. You pay them $500,000 down, or whatever deal you can make. And you get out of all this fight. And the first go around, the seller's going to think it's worth a lot more than you do. And you just smile and say, see you later. Okay, stay in touch. And then about 6 months later, they'll come around. And I'm not trying to be the way my voice sounds and everything, but my goodness, I've just seen that. And I've seen so many of my clients grow when even when they were 7 and 8 million, they go and they pick up, and then you take that little $2 million guy, you put one of your people over there, you start selling, and that would be a big recommendation I'd have for the 15 and $20 million people. And anyway, that, and then right along with it, and I'm back to my old preaching, be careful who you hire. Hire great people. Hire only the best. Don't get caught in the game of, oh, we have 2 open territories, fill them, and if it doesn't work out, we'll put some. That's what losers do. And I just share with you the companies that I've observed for 40 years. They're the best companies because they have the best people, and they do the best training, and they have a fun, upbeat environment. And so I go out, I buy myself a little $1 million guy, and then another $2 million guy, and then I hire good people, and I try to run that sucker up to 30 to 40 million. And then everybody asks me, well, what's going to happen to the industry? I don't know what's going to happen to the industry. I mean, for the next couple of years, I know some things we can do to position ourselves to where we have the maximum options, that no matter what happens, we can roll.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was some pretty good advice there. I did not expect the comments about the leasing companies, the financing banks, and your partners. That was excellent. So this was fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time out of this. We're going to cut you loose. My dogs are about to go crazy.
Okay.
My wife's coming in, and we will.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah.
Let me come back 1 second.
Yeah.
With leasing companies, and I was in the leasing business for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
Get off the deal of trying to get the exact best rate. Get a relationship.
Yeah.
Get a relationship.
I would agree with that. Mike Reardon, this has been awesome.
Okay.
Thanks so much for your time. We're going to do more of these. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
That would be great.
Thanks,
Mike.